Welcome to this brief demonstration of moving your domain from another DNS provider to Amazon Route 53. This is part 2 of a series that demonstrates how to move registration services, while part 1 demonstrates how to move your DNS zone. In this demo we have the domain, moved to auth53.com, that is currently with another provider. Our goal is to move both DNS zone services as well as registration services to Amazon Route 53. While we will be using Google domains as an example for the current provider, the demonstrated steps are also applicable to other DNS providers such as GoDaddy or Gondi. Let's get started. First, we will provide a brief overview of the benefits of Route 53. Next, we will have a look at how DNS resolution actually works. This will help us better understand the steps involved for moving a domain. But it will also help us understand what could go wrong. Next, we will move the zone's registration services. We will see steps both for using the AWS Console as well as using the AWS API. Amazon Route 53 provides a good compromise between resiliency, cost, performance, and feature set. It is the only AWS service with a 100% uptime (SLA) on the data plane, meaning responding to DNS queries. Behind the scenes, the service is built on 4 independent stripes that help achieve this high resiliency. The cost for a registered domain is well in line with most other providers. With AWS, you only pay for what you use. As such, you will be charged separately for the number of used zones, the number of queries your zone receives, or whether you use DNSSEC or not. But these costs are very reasonable. Amazon Route 53 uses Anycast from currently more than 400 edge locations across the globe to provide authoritative DNS services. As a result, it is frequently among the top-performing DNS providers. Another huge benefit is the robust feature set, including various traffic steering capabilities. Last but not least, a solid API is available, which allows you to programmatically manage almost all components of the domain lifecycle. We will make use of the API in this demo. At its foundation, DNS allows us to resolve a hostname like www.movetoauth53.com into an IP address. This is accomplished by a client, for example a browser, using a recursive resolver. An example for such a recursive resolver is Google Public DNS. Simplified speaking, the resolver will contact one of the root servers to start the recursion. While the root server doesn't know the answer for the entire hostname, it does know which top-level domain or TLD servers are responsible for .com and point the resolver to these servers. Similarly, for the next request to one of the TLD servers, the resolver receives an answer pointing towards the authoritative server for move to auth53.com. Finally, after contacting the authoritative server for move to auth53.com, will the resolver receive a response for www.movetoauth53.com. From a DNS management perspective, there are 2 spots that, as the owner of a domain, we need to make changes. First, DNS zone management. The DNS zone management controls the actual entries in the zone itself. It includes creating, changing or deleting records like www or mail, which can be of different types like quad A, CNAME, MX, or others. While in the old days you actually had to set up a set of servers running DNS software like Bind, with the availability of DNS services like Route 53, you no longer have to worry about this undifferentiated heavy lifting and can focus on the entries itself. In the case of Route 53, you can thereby make use of DNS server distributed across more than 400 edge locations. Second, DNS registration services. The DNS registration services offer a few main components: the exclusive use of a specific domain name as long as you meet the legal requirements of that particular top-level domain, the ability to update the TLD server for our domain with a pointer to the authoritative DNS servers, and the capability to upload the DNSSEC public key for the specific domain name to create the chain of trust. In this second part, we will focus on the DNS registration services. Please be aware of a common dependency between zone services and registration services. This does not apply to Route 53, where you can use zone services and registration services independently from each other. But many other DNS providers tightly bundle or link these two services together. This means that removing the DNS registration for a zone will automatically remove the zone services for this zone as well. Therefore, in order to prevent an outage, you must migrate the zone services first, before migrating the registration services. Let's have a look at our initial DNS setup in Google before we start making changes. As mentioned before, we will be using the domain move-to-a53.com for this video. Looking at the DNS zone setup, we can see that the zone services have already been moved away to Route 53. The domain itself is capable of being migrated, but is currently locked. Within Google Domain, we need to unlock the domain and request the Auth Code. Migration services can only be changed for an unlocked domain. And the Auth Code allows us to prove to our new provider that we are authorized to move the registration of this domain. Therefore, you should keep this Auth Code secret. Next, we will use the AWS Console to transfer the domain registration to Route 53. While Route 53 allows the transfer of multiple domains at the same time, we will only transfer a single domain here. We will provide the domain name and validate the transferability of the domain before also providing the Auth Code. In addition, we have to confirm the price of the domain registration and provide the registrant contact information. Once we have reviewed all information for correctness and agreed to the domain name registration end-user agreement, we can submit the request. If you prefer using the Route 53 API, for example because you want to do this process for hundreds of domains, you can do so as well. You can even do so with an AWS Cloud Shell. For transferring a domain with the Route 53 API, we will place all repeatable information, which are typically the domain contact information, into a JSON file. This way we can reference the same file for multiple domains to be transferred. Within the actual CLI command, we then only have to specify the domain-specific information, which are the domain name and the Auth Code. A few seconds after submitting the command, we will receive confirmation that the transfer is being processed. A few minutes after submitting the transfer request, you will receive a confirmation email from your previous registrar, Google Domains. To commence with the transfer, click on the link in the email and select Approve. After another few minutes, you will receive a confirmation email from Route 53 that the transfer has been completed. You can now return to the AWS Console and see that the domain's registration services have been successfully transferred to Route 53. This concludes part 2 of our demo video. Also check out part 1, which walks you through changing the zone services of your domain to Route 53. If you liked this video, don't forget to click on subscribe. You can also head over to www.edgecloud.net to find more interesting content. Thank you for watching.